Welcome to Freaked Out with your co-hosts, Liz and Landon.
What's up, everybody?
We are so excited for this episode for so many reasons. First, because it's the new year. Happy New Year, guys. It's 2023. I officially turned 40 this calendar year. I am scared shitless to be 40, but I'm going to make it into more of a positive thing. Usually I get really depressed when I start to approach my birthday, but I figure I'm going to try to start enjoying it a little bit more. That is my New Year's resolution.
That will definitely be a first. And another great thing about today is we get to do an episode on one of the things we love the most in this world.
Obviously, we have mentioned in previous episodes on how much we love wrestling, but you guys only get to see a little bit of the obsession, but we watch it as much as we can. We're really getting excited because we've had like a month off since we've had a pay-per-view because of the holidays, but we're finally back to having a pay-per-view on schedule in a couple of weeks, and I cannot wait.
Bray Wyatt will be having a match, which we've been dying to see him get into the ring, and I can't wait to see what this match is going to be about.
Right? And Alexa Bliss is going to be working side by side with him yet again. I cannot wait. I was manifesting the hell out of that. I know we've been manifesting Bray Wyatt to come back all year, and it finally happened. Now we just need to get these two ringside back together working. I know that they're working on that storyline right now, but oh my gosh, I'm dying for it to happen. And, you know, I'm glad that it's happening outside of this Vince McMahon boundary.
Absolutely. I know this may not be a popular comment, but Vince McMahon has done a good job getting wrestling going back then, but he is old and he doesn't realize that he needs to evolve into what current age is in the company. He wants to stay back in the Stone Age, basically. Although they made some progress with the female side of wrestling, which was great, but it also is connected more with Stephanie McMahon, not necessarily Vince McMahon.
Absolutely. And before we get into Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth, I do want to talk about Vince McMahon just for a moment.
He has been in all sorts of trouble. Those who are not aware, he has had a lot of sexual assault and sexual abuse allegations coming forward. A lot of people in the biz coming up and saying something looks though he's been paying people off with some of the money to keep them quiet.
Yes, and earlier last year, we had Vince McMahon come to the ring and announce his retirement. And it was done so abruptly. You would think that they had, this whole shebang for him because it's Vince McMahon. Like they've done for other wrestlers that have been there for 20, 30 years.
Absolutely. They decided to just make him step down and allow Triple H to take over. I am glad that they did that for the company, though. But I do agree they should have had something for him as a goodbye.
Well, that's why I feel like they kind of tried to rush it off. Do it quickly, get him out of there while they could. So I'm sure that...
Yeah, they don't want to lose fans. They don't want to lose fans over the allegations.
Exactly. I feel like they did make a good decision. I feel like wrestling may not have gone in the direction it has gone in without Triple H's help. And as soon as I saw that Triple H was going to be in charge, I automatically knew things were going to change in such a progressive and fantastic way because Triple H and Shawn Michaels and everyone else that was part of the Attitude Era really does know their shit. And they are the ones who honestly kept this company alive.
Absolutely, I agree with that. The creativity was good and it made it entertaining back then. They made it very funny as well. It was great storylines. They were pretty much unstoppable back then in that era. And they should be the ones that should be in charge now because they know what they're doing to try to bring that back.
Well, since McMahon is just watching from the background, really doing nothing, he's got nothing but time. He is very mad on how much things have progressed and how many followers they have and how many crazy things have happened on the show. They have had more of a following now than they ever have in the past, and pretty much jealousy. He is trying to take credit for some of this as well, and he also thinks he's going to get his job back somehow along the lines. But honestly, I think he's got a lot more legal issues coming his way. I don't even think he realizes the extent of these legal issues. He's going to have his name thrown in the mud over and over again. And when he dies, I feel like a bunch of female wrestlers are going to come forward and talk about what he did personally to them. And it's not just from the recent era either. This is from when he started. And I feel like all these women wrestlers had to do these very inappropriate things to obtain the job. And although it was common back then, a lot of them kept his perversion under wraps. And I really feel like that's what is all going to come out in some like big documentary.
Well, do you have any predictions on how wrestling's going to do in the next year?
Oh yeah, it's going to be incredible. They're going to test their boundaries. We are going to have some amazing, wonderful, record-breaking moments, a lot of media coverage for some big things, a lot of things coming with some big names, popular people coming forward. I honestly can't wait to be part of it.
All right, one more question. Is there any wrestler that you would like to do a reading on, whether it be dead or alive?
No, he's still not my favorite, but I still want to do a reading on Roman Reigns. I was always drawn to it. I keep being pulled to do it for whatever reason. I think he believes in this, which is also really cool. I also want to do a reading on Riddle. I feel like he could gain a lot of insight, and I feel like he would be blown away. I'm going to manifest that.
I definitely agree. I definitely think Riddle would be blown away. He would just be like, yo, bro, the whole time. We can talk all day about this show, but now we are going to move on to Randy Savage and Miss Elizabeth.
Okay, Randy was born on November 15th, 1952, and tragically died May 20th, 2011. He was better known for his ring name, Macho Man Randy Savage, and he was an American professional wrestler, and he became well known at the time for the World Wrestling Federation. At least that's what it used to be called.
He was recognizable by wrestling fans for his distinctively flamboyant ring attire and his intensity exhibited in and out of the ring.
Savage was exactly that, a savage. He had 6 world championship reigns during his 32-year career, including the WWF World Heavyweight Champion and 4 of the WCW World Heavyweight Champions.
Savage appeared in many television shows in the mid to late 90s. He appeared on wrestling-themed episodes of Baywatch that aired in 1996 with fellow WCW wrestler Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, and Big Van Vader. Also Kevin Sullivan. In 1999, he appeared on popular television shows Walker, Texas Ranger, and Mad About You.
I loved Walker, Texas Ranger. Big Vader fan as well. And by the way, we did a TikTok on him too.
In WWE in the 80s, managers were a huge deal. Many big wrestlers had talent, but not much of the mic skills. Managers made up for that. Others needed managers to immediately make them instant heels.
Everyone from Bobby Heenan to Jimmy Hart and Freddie Blassie wanted to manage Savage. Now, Savage took his time trying to find the perfect one.
The Macho Man shocked the world when he introduced his new manager as Miss Elizabeth. Who did that back in the day?
No one. It was shocking. It was a revolution, and everybody loved her.
Fans absolutely loved Miss Elizabeth, which made Savage an instant heel whenever he mistreated her. The Macho Man's manager wore the nicest dresses and smiled when she came in the ring. She didn't do much in the way of interfering in his matches. She just served one purpose.
When Savage wrestled, he would often chastise Miss Elizabeth for something she did or get jealous with another wrestler, paying attention to her. Fans loved Elizabeth, so they hated Macho Man Randy Savage.
WWE used the entire combustible relationship between Miss Elizabeth and Macho Man Randy Savage to help push various storylines.
The two of them had a very interesting dynamic on screen, and it just worked.
Now, behind the scenes, Randy Savage strode into the nearby gym and was suddenly stopped by the vision in front of him. There she was, Elizabeth Ann Hewlett. She was working the front desk. As Savage removed his sunglasses, Elizabeth gasped and exclaimed, "Oh my, your eyes are so red," Randy replied. "You ought to see them from this side." Certainly not the most romantic opening line, but miraculously, it was enough to get Savage a date with Elizabeth.
The two lovebirds hit it off quickly and soon became inseparable. Now, at the time, Randy was working for the Continental Wrestling Association, And Macho Man convinced the company that Elizabeth would make a great addition to the team. And he was right. Elizabeth's talents were displayed early, and the CWA found her to be a versatile asset. Not only did she do an excellent job as a backstage correspondent and announcer, but she was also involved in the editing.
Randy and Elizabeth decided to take their relationship to the next level. In Frankfort, Kentucky, the two were married at Elizabeth's mother's house. 6 months later, the couple would take their relationship to the next level in an entirely different way.
When Randy got a call from Vince McMahon, National's wrestling promotion, he knew his life was about to change. When they introduced the Macho Man Randy Savage character, he didn't connect to the audience at first. When McMahon suggested a female escort to accompany the future star, Savage saw the opportunity to bring his talented wife to WWE.
If you ask me, it was definitely a brilliant pairing.
Unfortunately, their relationship did start to crumble, and it looks as though Randy Savage had a very hard time with controlling his jealousy, and he really did shelter her from a lot. She didn't necessarily mind being sheltered, but she couldn't handle it anymore, so she decided to leave him.
According to sources, his on-screen persona started to become more of his own personal persona.
And according to some wrestlers in the locker room, they didn't get to spend a lot of time with Elizabeth because she spent a lot of time not necessarily communicating too much, or at least about her issues or problems. She kept things light and quiet. Until one day in 1992, Hogan and his wife had invited Elizabeth to spend some time with them in Miami. However, they learned later on that she left home without informing anything to her husband.
They had their divorce soon after. They left WWE and started working together at WCW. Elizabeth still had the same role. Savage, however, had become much calmer then than how he was within their marriage, and it was on its last wheels. Elizabeth and Lex Luger got involved in a steadily flourishing relationship.
Elizabeth was at Luger's residence in 2003, where the 42-year-old was found unresponsive. She didn't respond to a mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. She was rushed to Wellstar Kennestone Hospital, where she was pronounced dead. Reports stated acute toxicity was the cause of her death. This reportedly happened due to mixing painkillers and liqueur. Now, Savage had expressed publicly his condolences for Elizabeth and her family and mentioned that there was no hard feelings between them.
Savage went on to marry a high school girlfriend named Lynn Payne. On the morning of May 20th, 2011, Savage died at the age of 58 after suffering a sudden heart attack while driving with his wife in Florida. He became unresponsive and lost control of his Jeep Wrangler and crashed into a tree.
So much to cover in so little time.
My first question would be, are they together today? If so, how are things going with them?
They are absolutely together, and their relationship with each other is so different than it used to be. Even in the beginning of their relationship, they thought there would be a lot of perfection. And, they really did rush into it, did not communicate much at home, the way they wanted to anyway. And from what I can see, the communication just continued to get worse and worse.
So they found their way back to each other then?
Absolutely. Elizabeth shows me that she put a lot of blame onto Randy back then, but she said she didn't take the time to understand her own faults in the situation. When she had become involved with Randy, he was so big, so protective, helpful, and he got everything going for her. He honestly just wanted to get her a better life. He wanted to show her that she was more than just a fling, and he wanted to make sure that she found some meaning in her own life. He wanted her to realize that she had a stage presence about her and that someone so beautiful should be doing so much more. And apparently he was very surprised on how smart she was as well.
It's good that she could see her own faults in the situation.
Yeah, she said that she also wasn't very sociable and that she had a very hard time connecting to the other people in the wrestling world for a long time. Most of the time, if she did have interaction with anyone, it was people who were already coupled up. And from what she shows me, the women's division in wrestling, completely different from then. But one thing that has yet to change is how the women's division are tough And they're really tough on new people, new talent, especially if a woman gets handed opportunities, and she was kind of pinned as that woman. But what they didn't realize back then is that she opened the door for other women to come forward as managers for other wrestlers. She paved the way that we can make this happen, and I wish they had seen that back then.
All the women, even the valets in the wrestling division, did pave that way for other female wrestlers today to be able to do that in this current moment.
Absolutely. She had a very hard time getting along with people, and she did really keep to herself. A lot of people had speculated that she was self-isolating herself because of Randy, when in fact she kind of wanted to be hidden. She feels bad for not voicing that or expressing that before she passed on.
Speaking of her death, was there some sort of intentional aspect behind it?
She shows me that very early in her relationship with Randy, she relied on alcohol to soothe her pain. She did really struggle with how controlling Randy was, because he absolutely was, and he wanted to keep tabs on her at all times. They did spend a lot of time together in the beginning. He was really used to it. And then when they started to spend time apart with each other, he didn't really want that time apart, and he wouldn't really allow her to have her own personal life. And as time progressed, she got with Lex Luger. Now, I don't necessarily feel like this was a match made in heaven. I really think she went with him to kind of make Randy jealous. He also did promise her all sorts of things, including being loyal to her and giving her the relationship she always wanted. And in fact, from what she shows me, their relationship was not good at all. In fact, she shows me that it was pretty controlling as well, but actually much worse than Randy was. She shows me that not only did he become a little bit physical with her, he also cheated on her. He was very distant a lot of the time. She was really unhappy with this relationship. She felt like her needs were not being met. She didn't want to ever admit that for the longest time, because she simply wanted everyone to think her life was perfect, because she didn't want them to think it was screwed up. She shows me she never voiced her opinion enough, and she wasn't trying to kill herself, but the alcohol was becoming not enough anymore. She mixed the pills because she needed that little extra. She was mixing the pills and alcohol for quite some time, and she did have a hard time staying sober as well. She stopped caring about hiding herself and her issues about the last 6 to 8 months of her life.
Would you consider these two to be soulmates?
Right away, Randy shouted absolutely. He knew from the moment he met her that she was the one for him. And he did marry someone else, of course, and he was happy to a degree. He knew that marrying his high school sweetheart would give him that comfort level that he could never find with somebody else. But he really did truly love Elizabeth and was completely heartbroken over her death.
I feel that for him. I felt like he was absolutely head over heels in love with her.
He says he knew from the moment they met. He knew that she was the one for him. He didn't care what anyone said. He was taking her along his side. He did not want to be without her, and a lot of men on the road were really jealous of him because they wanted their wives there with them as well.
How does Elizabeth feel about him being her soulmate?
So, she says she got to a point in her life where she feels like she should have met Randy a little bit later, maybe 5 years later. She said that she was at a point in her life where she just needed to find her way. She says she got involved with him very young, and she feels like she wishes she had spent a little bit more time growing up. She didn't really understand the mature level that a relationship needed to be until she became a woman. She says that she was obsessed with Randy, and anytime anything bad would happen in the relationship, she would just stop talking about it. She wouldn't bring it up. She would pretend that there were no problems. He started to become more and more aggressive towards her, and it did scare her a bit. She said she had a hard time expressing herself. Often she found herself thinking about what it would be like to be with Randy after they split. And I feel like they communicated secretly from time to time because they just wanted to check in on each other. Wasn't anything big or major, but I feel like they always had some sort of communication going on.
When it comes to Randy, like any other wrestler in the business in those early years, their injuries were not necessarily taken seriously enough. They developed a lot of concussions related to wrestling. Did that affect him physically?
From what Randy shows me, he didn't like to admit this, but he did dabble on the drug side of things. A lot of the drugs in relation to maybe numbing his body. Definitely steroids was on that list. He shows me he drank a little bit too much at times, and he did pump iron a lot as well. A little bit too much from what he shows me. He said that he had blood pressure related issues, but I think he ignored them for quite some time. And it looks as though he did have heart related issues as well that, led to his heart attack. But he said he was pretty messed up physically at that point, but he didn't really care. He was too heartbroken over Elizabeth and her passing. He honestly just stopped caring entirely once she passed on.
I'm sure they've gotten past their issues by now.
Absolutely. They went through a lot together, but they absolutely do and have gotten past their issues. They communicate now and so in love. And properly this time. She said that as soon as he died, she went to him and they've been together ever since.
We will go to our Facebook group questions now. Remember, guys, you can leave your questions for certain episodes and also get a shout out if you just joined the Facebook group. We are currently working on obtaining 250 new Facebook members so that we can get to the baby Lisa Irwin episode by the end of this month. Hopefully we will be able to obtain that goal.
And for those of you who don't know the name of the Facebook group, it is called Freaked Out Podcast. If anyone is having trouble finding it, make sure to write it in the comment section and we will provide you with a link. Also, make sure to drop that like on the end of the episode, guys.
All right, Eva asks, did the wrestling life lead to their rocky marriage?
From what Randy says, it is not easy to have a relationship on the road or off the road. And regardless of how you're feeling about each other in the moment, you have to put it all on pause and put a performance on. It was hard to get along with somebody that you're having a difficult relationship with. But also in the same sense, he would have never changed anything about it. He loved working with her. They both worked well with each other and they enjoyed the amount of time they got to spend together on and off camera. But yes, the business did get in the way of the relationship at times, especially at certain timelines and storylines. Sometimes Vince McMahon would be paying attention to what was going on behind the curtains, and he would use those details in his own storylines. Since he didn't really care if anyone had problems off camera, he just wanted a good show.
Question for Elizabeth from Mandy. Were you truly happy with Lex?
We touched a little bit on this earlier, but it's a good question to ask because she wants to talk about this situation. Now, there was a lot of tension build up between Lex and Randy, and in fact, she didn't realize it at the time, but Lex was not necessarily heavily invested in Elizabeth. He knows that she was okay, but his issues were more so his beef with Randy. And he really wanted to make problems with Randy. He wanted to show the world that he was the better Randy. So what better way than to get his girl? He tried to put on a show for her, and she does show me that she fell for it. And as soon as he got what he wanted, which was a big reaction out of Randy, he stopped paying attention to her. And really, the two of them had their lives pretty separated. She was not happy with him at all, and she realized as the relationship carried on that she was much happier with Randy and that she wanted to leave Lex. She also has nothing against Lex Luger, but there was obviously, great qualities about him, which is why she stayed with him. But she shows me that the relationship was just not as it appeared, and they were totally two different people. She liked the big burly man, coming to her rescue, and Macho Man definitely put her on her pedestal, and Lex Luthor did not do those things. So she honestly was kind of more of like a trophy wife for him to collect.
Did he ever become physical with her?
He did, but he wasn't someone who did it with her consistently or over and over again. I think it happened maybe once, maybe twice. I feel like he has a lot of rage in his body because of everything he was doing work-wise, but there was definitely a concussion-related physical issue. And I honestly feel like that happened to Chris Benoit as well. The hard hits caused their brain to deteriorate, and he grabbed her, and that was enough for him. He also shows me he had extreme regret. He also shows me he was physical a couple of other times, but not with her. Perhaps other women. He's just not necessarily talking about it too much. But he just wants everyone to know he is not as angry of a person as he once was. And this all came because of his concussion-related issues.
It's been so wonderful to have the conversation with two great icons of WWE. They both had no idea how much they would impact the world. But even watching the old school wrestling episodes, it's really nice to go back in time and just see that iconic duo in action.
Absolutely. There are so many more wrestlers I want to continue to communicate with, and they all stay in touch, by the way. From what I can see, I know Owen Hart is someone who has spent time with them. Vader is also someone who just kind of pops in. I recorded a little TikTok for him not too long ago. I even feel Eddie Guerrero, which I've communicated with him before in the past, and I plan to cover him in a bigger episode later on. They are all incredibly happy that Triple H is in power. Bigger details on that later. They've been rooting for him for quite some time. He's been working his ass off to make his way up to the top despite being married to Stephanie McMahon. Vince McMahon did not make it easy for him. Triple H was kind of like a dick to work with, but he was right. That's kind of how they look at him. Vince McMahon did not want to give it to Triple H. In fact, I think Vince McMahon was in a little bit of a delusion that eventually, Triple H would take over. That was the plan, but he had no interest until the day he died to walk away. He made damn sure of that. I feel like McMahon would have stayed until his deathbed to try to control whatever was going on.
I absolutely agree with all of that. He would definitely want to continue to bring wrestling down the drain. Definitely happy as can be about that, though.
I'm excited to see where Rhea Ripley will be in a year as well. That girl is going somewhere, and I hope she's able to keep avoiding injuries. I feel something there, and I'm hoping I'm wrong.
God, me too. I cannot wait to see where Rhea is going to go. Well, thank you very much for connecting with these two wrestlers. It was always fun to do something in relation to wrestling. I thank you guys for joining us in our first episode of 2023. Vanessa Guillen will be next week's episode, so make sure to tune in on the regular side of the podcast. Until next time, guys, stay freaked out.